Hello everyone in CP2. I'm here today to give you my narration to the slides that have been posted on government. So in this slideshow I'm going to go over the federal and provincial levels of government. Here you can see a picture of Parliament Hill, the main government building in Ottawa. I'll try to keep this as useful as it can be without just listening to me read what's on the slides. Um, so, Parliament is another name for the government that we have, and it's broken into three separate parts. In particular, with our federal government, it is represented by our Queen and the representation that the England still has with regard to the government of Canada. So the Queen and her representative. Her federal representative is the Governor General. We sometimes refer to them as the Crown and their influence on government. We have the House of Commons. This is the elected officials that sit in the House of Commons. So when there's an election and everyone in Canada votes for their representatives, if they win their riding, for example, in Kitchener, if you voted for someone in your party, for example, you voted for someone liberal, and they won compared to the other parties, that person then becomes one of the members of the House of Commons. They become an MP, a Member of Parliament. That's what MP stands for. And they make up the members of the House of Commons. The other group is the Senate. These people are appointed, not elected, so they are picked by the Prime Minister to sit on a large group, which is the Senate, and I'll talk about their job in a later slide here. So again, we've got kind of the Queen and her representative, the Governor General, the House of Commons. These are the elected people that we put into office, and the Senate, who are appointed, not elected. Okay. The head of the Commonwealth. So when people think of the head of state for Canada, they often think, oh, it's Justin Trudeau, it's the Prime Minister, but technically it's not the case. The head of state for Canada still technically is the Queen, currently Queen Elizabeth II. Although she is largely a figurehead and she does not actually live in Canada. Since she's not here and doesn't really have any active role, she needs a representative in Canada to do that. Her representative in Canada is the Governor General, someone that is selected. And the Governor General acts on behalf of the Queen. The Governor General in Canada right now is Julie Payette. Interesting woman. I believe she was an astronaut. The system of that they use for the Governor General is an appointed system, so she's not an elected person. And her job basically is to represent the Queen and suggest, the Prime Minister suggests, people that can have this role as the Governor General. So the Prime Minister will suggest a few people, and then the Queen will select the person who's going to be the Governor General. Again, similar to the Queen, the role of the Governor General is more of a figurehead than actually a policymaker, although she does have a role. She has the final, the Governor General has the final role in a bill becoming a law, which is the royal assent, which is after a bill has been suggested in Parliament and has been voted on and has gone to the Senate for approval, and the Senate says okay, before it becomes a law, it has to get signed by the Governor General, which is called the Royal Assent. Um, and her job is also to make sure that Canada always has a prime minister. Not generally a problem. Technically, she has the ceremonial role of the commander-in-chief of the Canadian military, although, again, that's a ceremonial role. She doesn't really have any decision-making power in that role, but technically it is part of her title as the Governor General. Our actual head of government is Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. Um, and he's been in office since 2015. Um, and right now, Justin Trudeau represents the Liberal Party. There are there are several parties in Canada. There's the Liberal Party, who are currently in power at the federal level. There's the Conservative Party, which are currently in power at the provincial level. There is the NDP, the New Democratic Party, who are not currently in power, but almost had a chance to in Ontario in the last provincial election. There's the Bloc Québécois, which is another federal party, although they only really represent the Quebec's interests. So they're represented federally. And there is the Green Party, which is another federal party, which is a more environmentally focused party. And then there are other write-ins, but those are the major parties. The ones that are actually more likely to make a play to be in charge of government of the government of Canada are the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the NDP. He's the Prime Minister of Canada because his party won the most seats in the last federal election. Whichever party wins the most seats gets their leader to become the prime minister. So it's not a voting system where you're voting for the person. So in the last federal election, we were not voting for Justin Trudeau. You'd be voting for your local representative for the Liberal Party. Since they had the most, he became the prime minister. He currently has a minority government, which means that he has less than 50% of the members of parliament in Canada, which means that they can't pass any bills to become laws without cooperation from some of the other parties. When there's a majority government, it's much easier for bills to get passed and for laws to move along. So that's what it means to have a minority government. The cabinet of the government is the prime minister gets to appoint cabinet members from their own party, from the elected officials that are already there. So if someone wins their riding and is elected to become a member of parliament as part of the winning party, so if you were a Liberal representative in Kitchener and you won, you would go to Ottawa to represent Kitchener there as the member of Parliament. And if you showed great skill and you were and the Prime Minister knew that, they could appoint you to be part of their cabinet, which is kind of their closest council, and also each cabinet member or the cabinet minister becomes head of a department, the leader of a government department, like health and welfare, defense, or citizenship and immigration. So they become kind of like the boss of one area of the government. So this is kind of like the highest level of a member of parliament outside of being the prime minister. They have a lot of the power to influence decision making because they kind of rally together the other members of their party to help get support for the changes they want to make within the government. There's a link here that kind of links into all the different cabinets and ministries that they have and who their leaders are here. You can see a picture right here of the cabinet that we currently have in Canada here. And we look at here, the House of Commons. So again, there's some links to you can see the pictures and all the lists for all the different people and representatives. But this is the big area, the big place where they do the debating for all the new bills and the voting for things, where they can fit in all of those. How many is it? 338 members that can all fit in there, so that they can all have their voice heard and represent the people that elect them. So, like I mentioned before, the House of Commons is made up of those members of Parliament that are elected by the people. In those 338 ridings, they all get one member of Parliament to be the representative for the government. Any member of Parliament can present a bill, which is their proposal for a new law that gets voted by the large group there. So it doesn't have to be just the cabinet or the prime minister. It could be someone from a different party can recommend that some changes be made, and then it's done in a very democratic fashion where they all vote on it. Generally, people tend to vote with their parties, though. All bills must be passed by the House of Commons to become laws, but that's just the first step. After something's passed in the House of Commons here, if they get enough people to vote for it to agree with it, then it goes on to the Senate, which is the next step in becoming a law before it gets to the final step, which is being signed by the Governor General. Very rarely would the Governor General not sign a law that's been passed by the Senate. Well, I talked about the current leader in Canada, Justin Trudeau, the leader of the official opposition, which is the second place party that has the second most seats in the federal level. That's the Conservative Party. Their leader is Andrew Scheer right now, the Conservative Party. And they generally sit across from the party in power. So it has a very opponent-like feel there, since they're looking at each other and they generally have opposite views on many different things. Let's talk about the Senate. I've mentioned them before. So the Senate, these are appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister. Again, generally the Prime Minister kind of picks them, and the Governor General will usually agree with what the Prime Minister suggests. And again, its members are not elected; they are just chosen. Then they are elected, or they're appointed to this position for essentially life. They can serve until age 75. At that time, they're asked to leave. They can quit before then, but at no point do they have to get reappointed. They get that job really until they are too old to do it or they want to quit. Their job, the job of the whole Senate, is a fairly straightforward job. It's to see that no laws are passed without very careful thought. So basically, the Senate's job is to inspect bills after they've been passed in the House of Commons and make suggestions to laws to improve them or make them more fair. An example of this was a couple years ago when they passed the legalized marijuana in Canada. It was passed in the House of Commons probably about a month or two before the Senate approved it, because they had some little details that they kept wanting to change, but eventually the Senate agreed to it, and so it got bumped back and forth between the Senate and the House of Commons to make some small changes until everyone agreed to it, and then it finally became a law. And again, here's a link if you'd like to see more on them. Now, so that kind of covers the federal government. Onto the provincial government, which follows a similar structure to the federal government, but has some slight differences. Again, very similar. For the federal government, I mentioned they have MPs, members of parliament. For the provincial level, they have MPPs, members of provincial parliament. Again, the structure is still the same. You don't vote for the leader themselves. You vote for the representatives in your area. So in Kitchener, you'd vote for your person there, and then they represent you at the provincial parliament, um, and the location is generally the capital city of the province. Um, the Yeah, and they handle matters such as education and healthcare, and some other ones too, but those are the main ones. Now, I mentioned before, the Queen plays a big role in Canada, and she's not here, so she has the federal um, representative as the Governor General, but that's for the federal, for the whole country. Obviously, the Governor General can't be in all the provinces and territories to help manage all of those governments, so the Governor General will appoint a Lieutenant General, or sorry, a Lieutenant Governor, um, which is the Queen's representative at the provincial level. Um, the current representative for the Queen at the Ontario level is Elizabeth Dowdeswell. She's the Lieutenant Governor here in Ontario. And again, she has the final job to pass a bill into law. And again, more of an official or more of a ceremonial um, position, less official. They don't actually have any power to make these bills, maybe more suggestive. The leader of the province is called the Premier. Currently in Ontario, we have the leader Doug Ford, who is the leader of the Conservative Party, the Progressive Conservatives, the PCs. This is different than the federal level, right? In the federal, we have the Liberals. Here in Ontario, we have the Conservatives. They do not have to be the same. Um, they've been in power for about 2 years, and he has a majority government, so more than 50%, which means that they're able to pass bills fairly quickly and easily. And again, on the provincial level, there's a cabinet as well, which is done the same way at the federal level. They are chosen from the members of provincial parliaments, so all of the elected officials from the same party, they're elected and given the different areas of government that they are in charge of. We have the current leader of the opposition, Andrea Horwath, who represents the NDP. The Liberal Party did very poorly in the last election. They were not the number two. They were the number three. They actually lost official status. I think they had less than 11 seats. Um, so, yes, again, they would be the number two party, again, in opposition to the Conservative government in Ontario. The responsibilities with regard to the provincial level, um, the provincial government's responsibility is the municipal government. So they help organize, make it possible for cities, which are municipal. That's what municipal means, to be able to get things done. They help allocate money. Municipal governments don't have parties. They have generally mayors. Um, so the municipal government also does not have a crown representative. There's no um, representative for the Queen at every single city, just in the provincial level. Um, I'll uh, I'll I'll have another presentation on the municipal government where we'll go over what their roles are. Um, and so basically, there's kind of the two-tiered government of the federal level and the provincial level here. They have different leadership and they have different roles and responsibilities, which are laid out fairly obviously in some of the other materials here in Econestoga. I hope that was helpful, and feel free to talk about it the next time we meet together, or feel free to email me about anything there too. Thanks very much.